Thank you. The minutes for January 23rd, 2012 are there before you as well. Any errors or omissions? Discussion? Councillor Creasy?
I'm just curious under reserve consolidations and proposed federal reserve consolidations. That's meant to be municipal or state specific? 62-341.
Should be financial reserve.
Thank you. Good night. Anything further? Need a motion to accept minutes? Councillor Foster?
Move that we accept the minutes for January 23rd.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce two new staff members that have joined the City of Lacombe. We have, first of all, our new Manager of Planning and Development, Jeff Loring. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
And our new Manager of HR, Mr. Bert Assen. Welcome, Bert.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norma. I get a motion to accept the council mailbox as information. Councillor Connick?
I would so move that we accept the items in council mailbox as information.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you. That brings us to public hearings, not till 6:30. So we will bounce down to is our presenters here? Is wastewater? Okay, we'll wait for those. Let's bounce down to Community and Economic Development, City of Lacombe Parade Float. I see Mr. Lapointe is here with us. If we can get him in and out. Always got a young family. Brenda, did you want to start this one, or are we going straight to Guy?
We can go straight to Guy.
All right. Welcome, Guy. Great to have you. We don't get to see you too much here at council meetings. And we'll turn the floor over to you. Welcome.
Sure. So just a quick background on the parade float. Sorry about that. So as approved in the capital budget, it was a $50,000 item. We've gone through the process and evaluated. I believe we had 7 entries, and from that number, we've whittled it down to one candidate from Calgary. The competition was actually quite close. I don't know if all of you have had the opportunity to review, but we had several outstanding applicants, and the one that we finally have gone with actually received full score across the board. So we're very happy with the results of the process, and are recommending that we go with Heavy Industries out of Calgary.
Thank you. The information before you there, Councillor Connick.
Just one question. You have in here is a push style concept. Is that like, what does that mean exactly? Is that pull behind, or what is that?
Right, so there were 3 options that we asked people to look at. The first was the push style, which is just basically people powered, and that is the most cost effective float option. The second was a trailer style, which is pulled behind by a trailer, and those actually move up in cost to about $50,000 to $70,000. And then there's the motorized option too as well, that moves up to $70,000 to $110,000. So we were actually looking at probably the most cost-effective means for us, and the company in question has assured us that we'll get full value at that amount too as well.
Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. Guy, is there any, so we're going to the people push, is the style, and that cost is going to be $50,000?
Yeah, 50,000 is the top end. We're hoping to get some additional use out of it too as well. So the float itself may cost anywhere around 30 to 35, but because of this group that we're working with, we're looking at possibly having a mascot constructed so that we can have use outside of parades. And then we're looking at having some additional functionality built into the parade float too as well, so that it's not just a one-time use thing. We can actually layer in some different concepts too as well, so that it could be used at Christmas. It could perhaps be taken apart and disassembled, so that we could use portions of it at a trade show, or say as a standalone display at the LMC. So we're trying to get maximum punch for what is a very affordable float in the grand scheme of things with other floats.
Great, so the unit will be stored indoors when it's not being used?
Well, the plan is for it to be stored in the Quonset, and we're planning that it should have a lifespan of between 3 to 5 years. Given that we are able to hopefully build in these other component pieces that can be layered in, we could, for a nominal cost, update and refresh the look of the float, whenever we decide to do that.
Thank you.
Councillor Connick?
I'm just building further on those, questions, on Councillor Foster's questions. So it can be something that can be transported then to, say, another parade, if we want to go on the Red Deer parade, can it be then transported via trailer or something?
Yeah, I should be very clear here too as well. The plan is not for this just to be used at Lacombe Days or at the Christmas Santa Claus parade. Our hope is to bring this to the Calgary Stampede, to the Edmonton X, to Red Deer, hopefully Ponoka. Probably, we don't want to have a very big tour schedule, because with volunteers that would be difficult to coordinate, but we're going to try to choose the ones that will give us the biggest bang for our buck.
Councillor Kusi, I saw you thinking there.
Well, thank you for noticing that, Mayor. Actually, you already answered my questions.
Thank you. You spoke to the portability of it, or how it is, and removing some of the items so it can be used at trade shows. Is that reality? Is that something that is there?
Absolutely.
Are we still working on that?
There should be no reason why that they couldn't accommodate those requests.
Okay.
That was written specifically into the request for proposal too as well. And there's been no reason to believe that they shouldn't be able to accommodate that. The portability, quite honestly, the way that they make the material that it's made from, should be able to stand up on its own. We wouldn't even have to throw a tarp onto it. If you just throw it on the back of a trailer, it'll hold up to rock chips the whole bit. But we will transport it with a tarp on the back of the trailer kind of thing.
Okay, and then you speak to the lifespan of it, of being 3 years. That would be in an aspect of outdatedness, is that correct? Not the structure itself, is that correct?
I would tend to believe if we maintain it well enough, this should be able to withstand being stored outdoors. So if we store it indoors, the longevity could be beyond 5 years too as well. But again, the outdatedness is probably something we should consider at this point too as well.
Okay, thank you. And then with the existing infrastructure, I guess, if you will, of the existing float, we can just change components and add components and swap around a little bit, and that would be where it would be a little bit cheaper for the next one down the road. Is that correct?
That's the idea, yes. So that we don't have to update, in 3 years' time. We could just change out the component pieces, and again, we're hoping to even have that look and feel for a different sort of holiday feel too as well. So we could have even within the same season change the look and feel of the float.
All right, thank you very, very much. Any further comments or discussion on that? I think you're looking for some sort of a decision tonight, are you not? Councillor Connick?
I would so move that council direct administration toward the city float project to the heavy industries.
All right, thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you, Guy.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
was a bit of a communication mishap with Stantec, I guess, so they are an hour out. They're here right now though, so if we can go ahead and do the other engineering things, then they'll be here by the end of that.
Okay. Sounds good. Yeah, okay. All right, we will move to Recreation, Parks and Culture, Storm Ponds, ratepayer inquiry. Brenda?
Thank you, Mayor. So before council tonight, administration's looking for some direction. And upon that direction, we will leave this meeting and create a policy that reflects council's request. And a bit of background on this item is that we had a recent issue identified by a citizen relative to industrial lighting being added to, or to allow for skating on the storm water pond located in Iron Wolf subdivision. And when the lighting issue was being investigated, it was apparent that the community has used the stormwater pond for skating, and it's been maintained by the residents in the neighborhood, and they had simply added the lighting to allow for more time on the ice and support that endeavor. Administration found that in the outline plan for the Iron Wolf subdivision, that there had been a provision in the outline plan that allowed for a possibility that the stormwater pond may be used for winter recreational activities. And the outline plan is a plan that is developed by the developer, and council did adopt that plan. It's not a statutory plan, but certainly it went before the council of the day, and they adopted the plan, and the statement was within it. And as council can see, the plan indicates that this may be a permitted activity, and that it was to be determined in consultation with the recreation department as to whether or not that activity would be permitted. That discussion or decision was never took place. And so despite the outline plan being passed in 2007, this is the first time that council and administration will be discussing this particular issue. Throughout this process, there were opinions sought, both from legal counsel and from our insured. And as with all things, there are many things to consider, and we're left to come up with a policy that best, I think, reflects the needs of our community and the capacity of the municipality to deliver on that. Now, the stormwater ponds, as everybody is likely aware, is part of our overall stormwater infrastructure system. The ponds receive rainwater and runoff from streets and water that runs over ground. And the content of stormwater ponds will have dirt and debris, oil, salt, those kinds of things in it. And they also have unpredictable shifts in water levels, and so as water is flowing in or flowing out, the water levels can shift. And these conditions can make stormwater pond ice more unsafe or possibly fragile than natural water bodies. We've provided for council a listing of the number of stormwater ponds that are within our boundaries, and we've separated those out, differentiating those from our natural water bodies. When we look at this circumstance from a park and recreation point of view, or pursuing leisure pursuits or supporting those, certainly the recreation department wants to support active, healthy lifestyles. Instances such as this, where in particular there's access to service that people can access of their own accord. It's not a scheduled event, it's an unscheduled event. It also is accessible to all age groups. These are certainly endeavors that, from a recreation point of view and a healthy community, that we want to be pursuing. Of course, we add to that, we're always evaluating risk with all our recreation facilities that we allow for. There is a certain amount of risk, and we certainly do our best to develop policies and protocols that mitigate that risk and move us away from supporting things that are careless and full of risk. So it's common for people to use, to want to use stormwater ponds, and it is common in other communities that they are used for recreational pursuits, but it's equally as common that they are not permitted for recreational pursuits. And so we have provided a few examples of other communities where council can see what their practices are. The instance of the Iron Wolf storm pond, the residents of course would like this ability to stay in place. They are willing to look after the cleaning of the ice and making sure that it's safe to their minds. And one of their residents or a few of their residents have indicated that if they don't have this activity within their community, they actually have to leave their community. There's not another facility within their neighborhood that allows them to do this. Currently, the city allows for skating on Crana Lake, which is a storm pond, and also on Royal Oaks Pond. And the city measures the ice, clean the ice. We provide, in the instance of Crana Lake, we clear 2 areas. We do a skating loop, and we also provide a larger rink. And we have maintained these. Skating has happened on these stormwater ponds for a good number of years. And to my knowledge and Calvin's knowledge, there have not been any incidences that have occurred because of this. Camrose and Saskatoon allow for skating on designated stormwater ponds, and they provide inspections as needed. And this is they provide it under quite strict guidelines and council policy, and they commit significant resources to that practice. And the resources that you're committing are heightened levels of staff that attend the sites on a regular basis, and very frequent measurement and management of the surfaces. The City of Edmonton is currently reviewing its policy, and at this time they advise persons that using stormwater ponds is not condoned for skating, and they provide an information pamphlet identifying the safety purposes or issues or concerns. And the City of Leduc allows skating on one stormwater pond, banning the rest. There are communities that have completely banned skating on the ponds, and that's Calgary, Spruce Grove, St. Albert, Okotoks, Rocky Mountain House, Guelph, and Brampton. So we have asked council for some direction. We have provided several alternatives because there are a lot of different things that you might wish to consider or put in place. Administration at this time is recommending that we implement alternative B, which limits permitted skating to Crana Lake, Royal Oak, and the Iron Wolf Storm Pond, and that we would then provide the same level of oversight to the Iron Wolf Storm Pond, but that we do not permit skating on the remaining stormwater ponds. And secondly, that we would recommend that council provide direction that we would install neighborhood outdoor rinks that are, we would place them strategically around the community, and we would do them on grassy areas, and they would simply be snow-banked rinks without boards that would provide the opportunity for people to skate. I will advise council that there was an error originally on this memo. We had inadvertently said that we had supported alternative E, which was an error. It is actually alternative F. So I wanted to let you know that. And I'd be happy to take questions.
Discussion? Councillor Koenig and Councillor Foster. Councillor Kite.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. You've given a list here of the stormwater ponds that we currently have. But these don't include the ones that probably go up in the Wolf Creek Crossing, is that correct? Is that a potential for 2 or 3 out there?
That's correct, they don't include those.
Okay. My only question or concern is that there's probably gonna be some people that come forth and say, well, how about our stormwater pond? I'm just wondering if we couldn't, you know, if we post a sign, like we skate at Royal Oak all the time, and use simply a sign there. I wonder if we couldn't just place a sign at all of them, and, you know, skate at your own risk, that's your business, but that's my thoughts on it.
Thank you. Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. And just further to Mr. Connick's comment, I like the idea of Iron Wolf having that extra added weekly maintenance, so that that certainly is going to be a very positive situation for them. But it does bring, as you indicated, Brenda, the other areas. So how do we manage that? In every community that I've ever lived in outside of Lacombe has always had these types of facilities, but limited. And I suspect that we could open the floodgates to having 27 requests for these grassy, arid ponds. And I think that we'd have to look at what's very reasonable as far as strategically placing these things and letting everyone know. And I think Ruben's comment about putting signs up at each one could be, you know, here are the areas of usage going forward. That's my comments.
Thank you. Councillor Kite?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I support the recommendation by the administration. I had a question though. The concerned citizen who first brought this forward had an issue with lighting, and we don't have lighting per se in any of the current ponds that we use. And so would that be something that we are addressing or not? It's not addressed in this memo.
To Councillor Kite, this time we have not addressed lighting for any of our outdoor rinks. If we are to do so in the future, then we would have to budget accordingly, and that would be brought forward to council for approval.
Supplementary to that, then we would just need to inform those people who use the ponds that they are not allowed to rig any kind of their own lighting arrangements there. So it's understood by all users that it is what it is, and even though if they want to pay for it, fund it, do whatever, it definitely becomes a safety hazard also if it's not done properly. So just more information.
Councillor Rempel?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Excuse me. I guess my thoughts on this are, yes, we do have a few of these stormwater ponds that, like Ruben said, you know, is everybody gonna want to be able to skate on theirs? My opinion in this is, if there's people in the neighborhood that are willing to, you know, keep the snow off and clear it and that sort of stuff, if we just put some signs up at those ones that we don't maintain, you know, use at your own risk, that sort of thing, I'm in favor for that. I don't know if every neighborhood is going to band together like this one has and want to keep it, you know, clear of snow. I think most people are probably going to use the ones that the city does, but I say, you know, great for this neighborhood getting together and doing that, you know, taking some initiative and not just coming to the city and say, hey, you know, clear this for us, we want to skate here. And so my recommendation would be, you know, especially for them there, that if they're willing to look after this, and I know that most parents are probably going to make sure that the ice is safe for their kids, at least I would hope they will. You know, it's like when you go to the beach, some beaches have lifeguards, some don't, you know, swim at your own risk, and I think we could do the same thing here with the skating, so that's my opinion.
Thank you, Mayor Christie, to Councillor Rempel. Certainly, we would in no way discourage residents from going out and cleaning off the ice surface. We would welcome that. However, we still have a responsibility as a municipality to ensure that surface is safe. So we would have to perform the inspections in addition to what the residents are doing.
Councillor Casey?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. Norma, that's exactly what I was gonna bring up. I think as far as the safety end of it, fine, let's do our ice inspections. If they're willing to maintain it, let them have at it. I think they should be encouraged to do so, especially when it has such a small financial impact on the recreation department to perform those inspections. So, as for the lighting, I think that's a whole other issue. Obviously, they had an individual who was not pleased with the lighting, so that was unfortunate, given that it's a small area of our community. I think that the bigger ponds, one located behind us here on Cran and whatnot, certainly involve a lot more people, and that's why the city's taken it upon themselves to keep those areas clean. So, which I think is money well spent in this kind of passive recreation. So, if the people in that area of our community are willing to maintain it themselves, I suggest that we encourage them to do so.
Thank you. All right, my turn. Correct me if I'm saying it wrong here, but this community's been doing this for quite a while. The community has set up that the backs of the houses back onto this park. In Lacombe, we have been trying to promote friendly, safe communities. I don't see anything better to do that than have a recreation area right in your back park. As Grant mentioned, they've been maintaining it for however many years that they've been skating on that. Apparently, we didn't know. I encourage this. I encourage this as a community to come together. It's a safer community if you know your neighbors. You look out for your neighbors. You look out for people that you know. And for kids, recreation area for kids and adults alike, they look after it, I think, as well. From what I understand, from what I've been told by the residents, they don't let kids or anybody skate on it unless it's a foot, which is 30 centimeters, which they can drive somewhere between a light truck and a heavy truck on there at that time, and they check it weekly. So if our staff can go visit them once a week, make sure they're not near the inlets and the outlets, make sure it's where it's supposed to be, that the ice thickness is there, I encourage it wholeheartedly. We have some ponds on here too. I know I see all the time. I've actually seen an ice shack out on Len Thompson Pond. Do we maintain that? And I think the issue is with insurers or the lawyers is if we maintain it, then it's okay. Well, do we maintain it as well as a neighborhood would? Do we watch the kids, these houses back onto this pond? These kids are watched every time they're out there. They even have gone to the expense of buying a light plant so that the kids can play at night. So are they sticking them out there and forgetting all about them for days? Absolutely not. Do we monitor our skating ponds every day? Absolutely not. So I wholeheartedly support some sort of an agreement where they look after it. We go down and make sure that the ice level's there, the thickness is there, and let them do as they have been doing for the last few years. That's my point of view on that. Anything further?
Sorry.
Councillor Foster.
So we've been talking about point B, which is including, I think that was the recommendation, Brenda, was point B, which says that we're going to take one more extra step than what's being done at Iron Wolf right now. So we're going to do what we've been doing at Crown Lake, Royal Oak, and now we're going to help the people in Iron Wolf. So that's more, and I think I was kind of getting the impression that we didn't understand that was being done, but unless I'm not understanding what the discussion has been. But anyway, it's absolutely a great alternative.
Brenda?
So based on council's discussion, they the recommendation that's put forward is that we do provide skating on Crown Lake, Royal Oak, and add Iron Wolf into that mix. Now this says that we would provide the current city maintenance. We can simply change that to say that we would do the measurement of the ice thickness and ensure safety, but that the maintenance for Iron Wolf would stay with the citizens of Iron Wolf. But we will continue to do Crown Lake and Royal Oak maintenance.
Councillor Creasy?
Are you awaiting a motion to that regard?
I think so, yeah.
And in answer to that, Brenda, yes, absolutely. I don't think the community is asking for us to come down there and clear the ice and flood it and make it an outdoor rink with boards or anything. They just want the kids to skate down there as they have for the last however many years. So I am wholeheartedly, if someone wants to make that motion, definitely. And it builds nothing but rapport with the city and community. So I wholeheartedly support that. Councillor Creasy?
I would certainly so move that the city continue to allow skating on Crown Lake and Royal Oak and Iron Wolf stormwater retention ponds, with the city providing weekly maintenance on Crown Lake and Royal Oak, and place appropriate signage as listed in our notes.
Do we want to add a weekly maintenance visit or a weekly checkup, however we want to word that, with regards to the community of Iron Wolf? I'd be comfy with that.
Yeah, or even, maybe even just say
Weekly
weekly
ice
inspection.
Sure.
Maintenance implies that we're gonna be clearing the snow and whatnot there, which that's not the intent, so inspection would be fine.
Thank you, Councillor Creasy.
Is there two parts to the motion, or just one? We have two pieces, so one do it one at a time?
Councillor Connick?
Well, I would just, further to your comments, Ian, I would just recommend that we just leave the council for administration to implement alternate F off altogether. Like you say, you're gonna be opening up all kinds of requests for these backyard rinks, and I think we should just leave it the way we've got it. And just maybe add that we would place warning signs on all other stormwater ponds prohibiting public use, as it's written there, or vice versa, put signs up on all of them saying, use at your own risk. I'm not sure which, but that's.
To Councillor Connick, I would suggest that the signs do not condone public use in any way. So we will prohibit use of all other stormwater retention ponds. And we will not put in place any grassy ice rinks anywhere else in the community, as I understand your comment.
So maybe if we could have that motion made right then, just so we're all on the same page.
Councillor Creasy is the mover, so could you read that back to us, Nadine, please? Thank you.
That council direct administration to implement alternative B, which limits permitted skating to Crana Lake and Royal Oak. Iron Wolf SWP, Iron Wolf Storm Pond under the current city maintenance on Crana Lake and Royal Oak, with ice inspection and oversight model for these locations, and further to place warning signs on all other SWP prohibiting public use. And then are we adding about grassy?
We can stop now. Is that the intent of your motion, Councillor Creasy?
The signage that I was referring to was the danger thin ice and whatnot. I don't think that we need to be placing signs on every other stormwater retention pond in the city, in my opinion. So I would like that reworded to allow skating on Crown Lake and Royal Oak and Iron Wolf stormwater retention ponds, with the city providing weekly maintenance on Crown Lake and Royal Oak, and providing ice inspection services on Iron Wolf stormwater retention pond. And I think that I'm going to leave off the signage bit altogether, because that's a legal requirement. I think that we're going to do place, so I don't think it needs to be involved in this. That'll make that a little clearer, will it not?
Thank you. Councillor Rempel and then Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Okay, I'm gonna throw something else in the mix here. Why are we even talking about Crown Lake and Royal Oak when they're already included in our maintenance? Do we even really need that in there? I think that it's starting to get a little bit confusing. We have no policy whatsoever. Okay, I missed that part then. Now I know why. Thank you for clearing that up.
Thank you, Councillor. Brenda?
Just to the comments of a few councillors about we're opening a can of worms. I don't think the resolution you're putting forward would preclude another community that could come and ask us to have a similar arrangement that is happening in Iron Wolf. So if there were groups that were interested in that, they certainly would be able to come and ask if they could have a similar arrangement.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Oh, sorry, Councillor Foster.
Yeah, it was great, thanks, Mayor Christie. I think I was going to mention about the signage, and I totally agree, because then we have swimming in the summertime, we have all kinds of different things, so this way we just leave it, and if we have to legally do something later on, I guess that makes sense, but keep it simple.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you. All right, we will go to council legislative coffee with council. Brenda, that's you again. I'll stick with you.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. So after our last discussions with council, we were asked to go away and establish dates for the upcoming coffee with council. And we are proposing 2 dates that are consistent with prior practice, which is a meeting in the spring, or an event in the spring, and an event in the fall. So we're proposing Wednesday, April 25th and Wednesday, September 12th. Our goal tonight is to establish those dates, and certainly we will be coming back to council to put together the details for those evenings as they become closer.
Any discussion? Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. Thanks, Brenda, for the report. I think we all had agreed that we wanted to do this at least twice a year. We had lots of discussion. It's my thought that if we're going to do 2 this year, that try the one on the Wednesday, April 25th. At the LMC as suggested, but I really strongly would like to see us do a Thursday night at a retail location like the mall, simply to give people the opportunity, because what we're seeing and what we've had in the past is when you have it at the Memorial Center, it's the people that are really keen on coming, but we don't get that ad hoc opportunity from people in the community. So that's why I think it's very important to have one of those sessions, and the mall is only the place that I'm thinking of because on a Thursday night it does draw people inside.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councillor Kite?
I like Councillor Foster's idea. I think the biggest turnout we had was when we had it at the mall during the first term. I think that's a good idea to try 8 different evenings and see what kind of response we get.
Okay. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Do you have any idea what kind of costs are associated with doing it at the mall, or no? Probably the same, I guess, minimum.
I don't have that information in front of us. I'm guessing it would be reduced to the catering, but we would have to verify that.
Yeah, I believe, because we just set up in the foyer of the mall, and it would just reduce, there would be no rental. I believe that. Councilor Rempel?
I was gonna make a motion, but if, do we need to find out first of all if we can get a Thursday around, in September from them all before we go ahead with making a decision? Probably something we should maybe look at.
To Councilor Rempel, you can proceed with making the motion directing administration to secure a Thursday at the mall in September, and we'll finalize that date for you.
So I'd like to make a motion that council direct administration to implement and further develop increased coffee with council sessions to 2 sessions per year, one to be held April 25th at the LMC in the Lacombe County Room, and one to be held on a Thursday in September at the Lacombe Central Mall.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you. So in keeping with Brenda, we will move to Lacombe Memorial Center, Anna Maria's Coffee Bar. Brenda?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. So before council tonight is administration's request for council support to enter into an agreement. Council will recall that we advertised an opportunity for private enterprise to provide services in what was Anna Maria's Cafe. The request for proposal closed on January 23rd. We had inquiries from different individuals, but at the end we received one formal application that met the requirements of the RFP. And the proponent has met all of the conditions, and certainly in our dealings with the individual has demonstrated abilities and capacities that give us great confidence in the future of that cafe. And that they attended the site visit. We've had several telephone interviews and phone calls, and then we had 4 references, which were very, very exceptionally glowing, I would say. The council may recall that in the part of the RFP was that a request went that the proponent identify what they were prepared, or models of remuneration that they were interested in providing. And this particular one has recommended annual lease cost of $7,200, which is the amount of money that Anna Maria's was being charged for that space. Additionally, they've identified that at the end of the first year, and with the completion of a financial statement that verified fiscal capacity, that they would be prepared to contribute an additional 10% to that amount. They are prepared to work around the kitchen availability. As you are aware, the kitchen is from time to time rented out to customers, and these individuals are willing to accommodate that in terms of the kitchen use. So we are asking for council's endorsement of this arrangement, and directing administration to enter into a formal operating agreement. We have developed the operating agreement, and it is currently being reviewed by legal counsel, but it is quite reflective of practices that we hold in other buildings and rental agreements.
Thank you, Brenda. Councilor Foster, then Councilor Creasy.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I'm very, very happy, and when ready, I'd like to make that motion.
Is there a question?
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. The council direct administration to enter into a formal operating agreement with Peg Benoit to provide cafe services at Anna Maria's in the Lacombe Memorial Center commencing April 1st, 2012.
Thank you. Councilor Creasy.
Thanks, Mayor Christie. Having read over the proposal and whatnot, that was a very interesting way of evaluating them. It seemed to be very effective in eliminating some of the ones that obviously were not qualified. That's good. I have a bit of a problem with the financial implications of providing documentation for the proposed additional 10% of net profits. I would suggest that if the individual is able to operate this at the cost that we have come up with there of $7,200 per year, and then stay at that for the first portion of the agreement, which I believe is 3 years. And if we deem that more is necessary at that point, then so be it. But to expect them to come up with financial statements so that we can see if they can, it just seems to be counterproductive to me, and I'm not in favor of that at all.
That provision actually was brought forward by the proponent. And her concern was that they're moving to Lacombe, they're new to Lacombe, and she wanted to be sure that that rent was viewed to be equitable. She didn't want to be seen to be having any unfair opportunity within the community.
Then that's completely different. I find that very shocking, but that's great. If she doesn't mind doing it, then that's different. I think to force her to do it is unacceptable to me, but if she's doing it of her own accord, then that's great.
Brenda?
We can certainly let her know of your concerns. I'll be speaking with her again tomorrow. But there's no forcing going on, no.
Thank you. Councillor Kay?
I'm also excited that we had somebody who's willing to take on the business of the coffee bar. Excited that they are willing to relocate to Lacombe. However, disappointed that we didn't have anybody local who actually put an application in. I was hoping that we would get some interest locally, seriously, who would actually put a complete proposal in, but we did not have that. So that's a little bit disheartening, but excited that we'll have the coffee bar operating again. It's been quite quiet there when there's nothing there, not even tables and chairs.
Thank you. Councillor Rempel?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I just wanted to comment on the financial part of this too. I'm glad that the 10% is there, based on the, how they do, because even though the space is small, I think we still have to be careful that $600 a month rent isn't a whole lot. At the same time, we want them to make money, but we also need to make sure that the public out there doesn't see us as we're giving them some extra benefits because of the rent. Because I know if you include garbage and water and sewer and electricity, all that sort of stuff, we still have to make sure that that our costs are covered. So I like that, and I think that that was good of them to notice that they do have some responsibility there. And yeah, it is too bad it wasn't someone local, like you said, but at the same time, at least we have someone in there. So good job on this. Thank you.
Councillor Connick?
Actually, further to Councillor Rempel's comments, is that space set up for separate water, power? It's not, it's all inclusive?
All inclusive.
So, in fact, it's all included in the rent then?
Well, I too would just like to thank administration for their work on this, for the filling out the RFP, the work done on it, and going through it. I'm very, very, very excited to have somebody actually move to town to open shop there, and number one to open shop there, and it's great to have new people moving to Lacombe. So thank you for the job well done, and looking forward to meeting the Benwas. There is a motion on the floor. Councillor Rempel, you can hear me from there?
I sure can.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you very, very much. We will now move to presentations, wastewater, issues related to flooding, presentation by Stantec. Matt, would you like to introduce the boys in suits section?
Thank you. With us tonight, we have several members of Stantec's team that have worked on our stormwater and sanitary sewer studies over the past 6 months or so. So I will have them step forward to do the stormwater side first. We've got Todd Simonson from Stantec, he's one of their principal engineers, and Brad Darvis is a stormwater management expert engineer from Stantec as well. So I'll let them take it away, and we've got the presentation ordered up.
Thank you, Matt. Mayor and Council, I guess, try and speak up here. Firstly, I'd like to thank Council for inviting us here tonight to be able to share with you the results of our stormwater study and the path forward so that we can resolve a lot of the issues that have occurred in Lacombe with the recent flooding. As Matt said, with me is Brad Dartis, one of our senior stormwater management experts in our office that will go through the presentation. We also have Mike Mushins as well, one of our senior municipal engineers that has also participated in this study and moving a lot of the issues forward. They also attended the open house with the residents a couple of weeks ago as well. So what I'll do is I'll turn it over to Brad. Mike and myself and Brad are here to discuss anything after the presentation. I look forward to questions.
You bet. Just before you do that, I just want to welcome you, Todd and Brad. Thanks for coming out tonight. I know you've got two spots on the agenda here. What we'll do is we'll bring this one forward, and we have a public hearing at 6:30, and we'll bring you back for your second one after that. So welcome, and looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you.
Good evening, thanks for having us. My name is Brad Dartis. And so I'm here to talk about the 2012 Stormwater Management Plan, and also how that leads into the 2012 Capital Works Plan. So we'll start by giving you some background on the flooding issues that the city's been experiencing, and then we'll go into detail on the 2012 Stormwater Management Plan, and then give some more detail on the Capital Works Plan. So the goals of the Stormwater Management Study are to increase the level of service, both stormwater and sanitary servicing, mitigate the potential for property flooding, and also overall environmental stewardship. So why was the 2012 Stormwater Management Plan undertaken? In 2011, there was two very noteworthy events. One that occurred from July 11th to 13th, and another one that occurred on July 26th. And the runoff depths for those two events were both about 47 millimeters in total. So the slide up there, the photo shows the flooding that occurred along 55th Avenue, and then the two graphs down there. The left one is the July 11th to 13th rainfall event, and the right one is the July 26th rainfall event. Next slide. During question period, if we want, we can talk more about rainfall events, but it gets pretty technical quickly, so I'll just keep it simple, keep it brief for now. So now on the Stormwater Management Plan, I'll give a little bit of Stormwater 101, we'll say, a little bit of theory behind how typical urban stormwater systems are designed. Next slide, please. So the urban standard in Alberta is called a dual drainage system, and the components of the dual drainage system are the storm sewer system, which is also called the minor system, and then there is the major portion of the dual drainage system, which is the overland drainage, so the runoff that drains down the roadways. The minor system is generally designed for a 1 in 5 year rainfall event, and then the combination of the minor and major systems are designed for up to and including the runoff that occurs from a 1 in 100 year rainfall event. Approximately a 1 in 5 year event is about half of the peak intensity and half of the total runoff that occurs for a 1 in 100 year event. So quite often that confuses people. They think that a 1 in 50 year event would be half the intensity of a 1 in 100 year event, but it's statistics don't work like that. It's the 1 in 5 is about half of the 1 in 100 year event. So what that means is that the storm sewers are designed for about half the runoff from a 1 in 100 year event, and the overland drainage accommodates the other half. Next slide is, this would be a typical subdivision, and they're called roadway trap lows. So what subdivision designers will quite often do is they'll dimple the roadways so that you get periodic shallow depressions in the roadway, again called trap lows, and these are generally about a foot deep is what you aim for. And the benefit of this is that you get, during an intense storm, you get the runoff dispersed throughout the subdivision rather than culminating at one intersection or one roadway. So that's what this slide is intended to show is, let's see if this works here. Anyways, so the top slide shows a subdivision with the regular roadway trap lows, and the lower one shows a continuous grade roadway where the stormwater flows are, again, they're culminating, and you can get the flows ending up being dangerously high at a downstream point, whereas in the top view, again, the stormwater is dispersed throughout the development. Now that's not to say, like the regular trap lows, that's the preferred design method. It's not to say that a continuous grade street is definitely going to have problems. It's just preferred if there's regular trap lows throughout the development. So I'm just going to get my water bottle here, and then I'll go into the computer model that we developed, the stormwater computer model. We did it using the PC Swim hydrologic computer model, and it's quite a good model. It's very powerful. It's a dynamic wave model, so it can handle backwater effects and just pretty much any hydraulic condition you can experience, it can pretty much model. Next slide, please. I think, yeah, keep, oh.
Adam, it's going backwards on me.
There you go, forward.
Okay, I'm good now.
So part of the model construction was we took the topographic data, which was actually from LiDAR data, and we along Wolf Creek there, and then as you go to the west, the white areas, that's the higher parts of the city. Next slide. And then the next step in building the storm sewer system, the minor system, and then we created the pipe elements in the model. And so if you go next slide again, that one shows the entire minor system for the entire city. So of course it's hard to make out too much on that. This zooms in a bit more, shows Crown Lake, and so in this figure the pipes are color coded, and they go from orange and thinner. They're about a diameter of 300 millimeters or about a foot, and then as you get into the bigger pipes, they get into the purple colors and blue colors. Next slide. So this is the interface of the computer model that I see when I'm working in the model. Right now, in purple, the major overland model segment is selected, and then you can see in the top right hand corner, there's a little cross section showing the roadway cross section that we've assigned to that roadway. And then, next slide. Then you can see that I've selected the pipe element just above the previously selected element. It's in purple now. And again, in the top right-hand corner, you can see that it shows the geometry of the pipe. This one's a 525. And then in that panel on the right, it has a lot of other useful information when you're analyzing the system, like the length of the pipe slopes, the flow in that model segment that occurred in the last model run. This next slide shows the catchment area that is assigned as draining to that manhole in that intersection. And again, the right side of the panel there has all the parameters associated with that subcatchment, such as the two most important ones are the subcatchment area, and then the next most important one is the percent imperviousness of that area. So now we're going to zoom out over the next two slides just to show the scale of the model. The previous slide showed that subcatchment at that one intersection. This next slide shows that same subcatchment in what we've called as Basin C, which just happens to be draining to Brown's Pond here. And then if we zoom out once more, again, you can see the Basin C that we were just looking at is in the middle of that figure, and so then there's another 12 or so basins that the entire city has been broken up into. So it's a very, very complex model. There's hundreds of pipe elements and overland drainage, roadway elements in the model, and then the various ponds that they drain to and the outfalls that they drain to and the trunks. So there's a lot of detail in the model, and yeah, it's very useful for analyzing the city's stormwater system. So now we'll go into the specific analysis that we did of the Bruns Pond and 45th Street trunk. That was the system that was targeted for this year's capital works.
Sorry about it. It wants to keep going backwards on me once in a while. I don't know what I did.
Scrolling forward and then scroll the other way.
I'll just scroll from now on, thanks.
All right, so the 45th Street trunk, it services about 290 hectares, but it's currently a 600 millimeter or 2-foot diameter pipe. And if you include the last pipe run, which is the pipe run going northwest to southeast that's crossed Highway 2A there, that pipe is 900 millimeters, and if you include that pipe run, then that trunk services 365 hectares. So if you go to the next slide, the area that, again, this is in the model, the area that's highlighted in blue, that's the 290 hectares that the 2-foot diameter pipe services, and then if you include the last 900 millimeter pipe run, then it also includes that pink sub-basin there. So that is quite a large area to be serviced with a 2-foot diameter pipe. So it was obvious that we needed to analyze that further to see if there were any issues associated with it. So the next slide, we're going to show a profile along this alignment here, the one that's highlighted in blue. That's the 600/900 millimeter pipe trunk. So this is the results from a modeling run for the 1-in-100-year design storm, which is, again, what you would typically design a urban storm drainage system for. And so it shows the pipes in there, full of water, of course, and then it shows each of the manholes go up to the surface there, and there's also a light blue line that traces through the top of the water surface in each of the manholes. that's called the hydraulic grade line of the system. That's basically where the ponded water surface occurs along that particular profile. So as you can see, it's right up to the surface for most of that pipe run, and so that doesn't leave a lot of capacity for stormwater to get into it and be conveyed away. So what we have modeled is the addition of a new storm trunk that pretty much goes down the same alignment. It goes a little bit further north, up into Bruns Pond, along the roadway rather than through the trailer park there. And this proposed trunk is, the southern half of it is about a 1200 millimeter pipe, so about a 4-foot diameter pipe. And then up towards the north, we're pretty confident that we can reduce it down to a 900 millimeter pipe, so about a 3-foot diameter pipe. So then we'll show the next slide here that shows this is the analysis, the model run results for the new trunk. And as you can see, the hydraulic grade line with this new trunk installed, it's now about 1.5 meters to 1 meter below the surface. So that gives much more opportunity for water along that trunk to get into the trunk and be conveyed out. It's a much better situation, of course. Then this is, we're going to show a profile through this part of the trunk that goes down 55th Avenue, because as everybody's aware, 55th Avenue in the Meadows was an area that was particularly hit hard by the flooding. On the right, there's 2 pictures there from the July 11th storm. The top one is looking west down 55th Avenue, and the bottom right one is looking west down the lane on the north side of 55th Avenue. So we'll go to the next slide, and this is the model results, the computer model results along that profile with for the existing system. Again, the hydraulic grade line is right up to the surface. There's one trap low at the intersection of 55th Avenue and 46th Street, and the model is suggesting that for the 1 in 100 year storm, that trap low is about 55 centimeters deep, so almost 2 feet deep. And so go to the next slide. This is the model results for the 1 in 100 year storm with the new trunk in, and again, the hydraulic grade line is vastly below the surface for most of it. At that trap low at 46th Street and 55th Avenue, it goes from almost 2 feet deep down to about a foot deep. And a foot deep is a very common criteria to design for. It's very common for roadway trap lows to be designed to have a foot of water in them for a 1 in 100 year storm. So the fact that the system is more or less being designed to have a foot of water for the 1 in 100 year storm, that shouldn't bother people, because like I said, it's a common criteria to design for. So for the next slide here, this shows the ponding extents in Bruns Pond and again in the Meadows for the existing system for the 1 in 100 year event. And so you can see Bruns Pond is spilling over into the trailer park, and in the Meadows there, that trap low has a lot of water in it, and it's quite a large trap low. The next slide, this is again for the 1 in 100 year event, but for the proposed system with the new trunk. And so you can see under this scenario, Bruns Pond, it's the level of inundation is completely contained to within the pond footprint, the designed pond footprint. It's not spilling over into the trailer park. And then in the Meadows there, you can see that trap low size has shrinked very dramatically, and and in the lane also, the trap flow in the lane is the inundated area is much smaller and the depths are much less also. Next slide, this again just shows the flooding that occurred on July 11th. The top left one, that's looking south along Bruns Pond, and again, the one in the bottom right we've seen before, that's looking west on 55th Avenue. Now we'll talk in a little bit more detail about the Capital Works program. Phase 1, again, is the 45th Street trunk upgrade. And so from this figure, you can see the southern half, again, it's about a 4-foot diameter pipe, and the north half is about a 3-foot diameter pipe. We're also proposing a new storm main that goes into the lane on the north side of 55th Avenue. Those are relatively smaller pipes, 300 millimeters and 450 millimeter diameter. And then at the southern end, we're looking at about a 1050 millimeter pipe to go under the Highway 2A and the railway tracks there. The reason being we want to make that pipe a little bit smaller, of course, without compromising the overall performance of the system, because the construction under 2A and the tracks is going to be a trenchless installation, so that is relatively expensive compared to the rest of the installation. So we want to keep that pipe size down as much as we can. Then phase 2, this is the Bruns Pond expansion. So this slide shows the permanently inundated area right now is, can't really highlight it, unfortunately. Let's see. No, it doesn't work on there for some reason.
It's working.
No, on these TV screens it doesn't show up for some reason. Anyways, so you can just make out the permanently wetted area of the pond there, and we're proposing to extend that a little bit to the east, and then also extend it to the south down into the grassy area on the south side of the pathway there. And the purpose of that, we're also going to lower the permanent water level by about a foot also. The reason for all these modifications is to increase the active storage depth of the facility from the existing of about 13,000 up to 22,000. And so what this active storage does is it attenuates the peak runoff coming into the facility. So you'll get high peak flows coming into the facility, it fills up the facility, and the facility drains down over the course of a day about at a much lower rate than would otherwise occur if you were just to let it go straight through. So we'll just talk briefly about inflow and infiltration considerations. It's also commonly referred to as I&I. I&I is the inflow and infiltration of stormwater into the sanitary sewer system. This is undesirable because it can overtax the sanitary system, and it also increases the sanitary sewage treatment costs. Public education is often the key to addressing I&I issues. I&I isn't something that you can address in one construction season. It generally takes 10 to 15 years for a municipality to gradually chip away at it and improve the I&I conditions. And that's why public education is such an important part of it, because a big part of it is getting the public to fix some of the drainage conditions on the private lots. So some of the best management practices, or BMPs, for the reduction of I&I are the removal of storm and sanitary sewer cross connections. So in some places you might have catch basins that are connected to the sanitary sewer system, so you would remove that connection and connect the catch basin to the storm sewer system as it should be. There's also the sealing of sanitary manhole lids in the roadway trap lows. Like I mentioned, quite often during an intense event, there'll be ponding of about a foot in depth that'll occur in the roadway, and if you have sanitary manholes in these ponding areas, then you can get a lot of inflow into the top of the manhole. So you want to seal off the top of the manhole so you don't get that inflow. There's redirection of roof leaders and foundation drains from the sanitary sewer system to the storm sewer system. This is more of a problem in older developments. Sometimes you'll have the roof leaders going right into the ground and tying into a sanitary service. So you would disconnect that existing connection to the sanitary service and have the roof leaders just draining onto the surface, onto a lawn. A pervious area is preferred because then you get more infiltration of that runoff rather than it just going right onto the street and into the impervious part of the system. And then foundation drains, again, they'll quite often, sump pumps will often discharge into the sanitary service, so it's more desirable if you can reroute that and have it pump to the surface rather than into the sanitary system. And then there's the potential relining of older sanitary sewers that are, quite often if they're older, they're starting to crack and degrade, or they just back 30 years they weren't as leak proof as they are now. The joints are a lot better now in the sewer mains that are installed now than were 30 or 40 years ago. So you can reline those older pipes to decrease the amount of infiltration that gets into them. Same applies to the manholes. So what's going to make this project a success is Todd, did you want to talk about this one?
No, go ahead, Brian.
I know you like this slide. Anyways, so the keys to the success are a good partnership between the consultant and the municipality, having a flexible yet clear vision, getting the community involved at all stages of the project, and also educating them where possible about the way typical stormwater systems and sanitary systems are designed, the way they're intended to perform. And then communication is key throughout the project with the various stakeholders.
Rempel, Councillor Creasy.
Thank you for that presentation. It's definitely helped me understand what I had before me while I was trying to make sense of it at home. I have several questions since I'm not very familiar with engineering. So in Lacombe, do we have the cascading trap lows, or we have the system where everything floods?
I would say it's a bit of both. The older subdivisions have a lot more of the continuous grade streets and less trap lows. And like I said, that doesn't guarantee that you're going to have problems. You can still have a system with those continuous grade streets that still functions perfectly fine. It's just the latest the preference these days is to have more trap lows designed into your subdivision. So anyway, back to your question, the older subdivisions will tend to have more continuous grade streets without the trap lows, and the newer subdivisions will incorporate more of the roadway trap lows in them.
Can I go through all my questions, or do you want somebody else to have a turn? I just have two.
Okay.
The second, yeah, what did it take? The second question was about the 2-meter diameter pipe on 45th Street. Was that the standard of the day when it was built, or was it an oversight?
I would say it was probably the standard of the day when it was built. Probably
I'll jump in and comment on that one. With a lot of the subdivisions that have been designed in, say, Alberta as an example, over the last 30 to 40 years, the standards have improved from, say, a 1-in-1 or a 1-in-2 storm event. So the pipes in the ground that might have been, say, a foot diameter 30 years ago that were designed for now, say, a 2-foot diameter pipe based on the changing guidelines. So the city of Lacombe has this basically the same or similar standards to, say, the city of Red Deer, where the 1 in 5 year standard for the underground component of your stormwater system is the standard nowadays. The other thing that's changed is the intensity of storms over the last 20, 30 years. The intensities of storms have changed. They're more frequent. They're higher intensities. So those are always constantly adjusted as new data comes in. And so the IDF curves, or the intensity duration curves that Brad uses in these models, they get adjusted and updated as required, so that we can look at different types of storm events, because you can have a storm event that's what we call a 1 in 5 year storm event, but it can do, you know, a similar amount of damage than say a 1 in 100 year storm event. It depends on the time of the year, whether there's hail involved. There's a lot of different things that come into how you analyze a storm event. So a lot of the work that we've done in the city of Red Deer, we did the whole East Hill area. Back in 2000, we did an East Hill storm study there, and again identified a lot of different components that needed to be upgraded. And the key there was, you know, we were able to find locations to put in some of these retention storm ponds, similar to the Bruns Pond, where we built the Michener Storm Pond, the Eastview School Storm Pond, and the Eastview State Storm Pond, including that with other things such as inlet control devices, which, you know, we didn't really discuss here, where we actually sometimes try and limit the water into the pipes and try to force more pipe water to run overland. And then in some of the trapped areas where Brad was saying there maybe be a long street that grades down to a low point, what we'll do is we'll actually oversize the trunks coming out of a trap low, so that we can get more water out of that area to either a retention pond or to a discharge or an outlet. So standards have changed, and for the better of the communities.
Thank you. And my last question was about the remedies regarding the sewer cross connection, the sanitary sewer cross connection. Do we know the locations of all those where they are cross connected? Is that anywhere? No. Thank you.
I wish we did. Councilor Rempel.
Can I ask my 2 questions? Yes. Thank you, Mayor Chris.
7 minutes.
You'd mentioned for one of the, you didn't say the pipes, the trunks, 2 different sizes going from a 4-foot to about a 3-foot. What's the reason behind that? When I looked at it, why wouldn't we just keep it a 4-foot? Is the cost to go from that one pipe to a bigger one that much more, or is there a reason that you would have a smaller one? I'm just thinking, you know, would that be something that has to be upgraded in 25 years or something like that?
No, it's just there's at the south end of that trunk, there's other trunks coming in from the west side, so the pipe needs to get bigger at the lower end because there's the trunks coming in from the west. Initially, I ran the model at 1200 the entire way, and up near Bruns Pond, the pipe was just over capacity. It didn't need to be that big for the amount of flows that's, as a result of Bruns Pond attenuating the flows coming into it, there's not near as much flow coming out of it, and so you just, that's what the model told us. We didn't need a 4-foot pipe all the way up there. It just wouldn't be good. Wouldn't be cost effective to.
Well, a couple of other comments, and before we had computer models, we used to have to do this stuff by hand. And the thing is if you can get more grade on the pipe, so, you know, say if you were reducing from, say, a bigger pipe to a smaller pipe, if you got more physical grade, then you can get more capacity through that pipe. So when we're looking at things like crossings, say across Highway 2A as an example, you know, we might look to see if we can get an increased grade, because if we can, say, do a trenchless installation, say directional drilling or pipe jacking or something, and reduce it down from, say, a 1050 to a 900, you know, that could save, you know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. So we try to look at the overall project in terms of the cost and the benefit, and ultimately not to leave the town or the city at risk in this case further.
Okay, that makes sense. My last question is, we have it draining into Wolf Creek at the very end. So, I know with these last storms we had, there were some concerns with, people that say they were affected by the water that was leaving Lacombe. And obviously a lot of that water was going over land and that sort of thing. What kind of effect is it gonna have to drain that much more water into Wolf Creek? Have you looked at how that's gonna affect those other areas?
Relatively speaking, the flow coming out of this new trunk is much lower than the flow in Wolf Creek, so it's not gonna have a perceivable impact on Wolf Creek. And the other thing is with the upgrade to Bruns Pond, we're helping to offset the increased conveyance capacity of the trunk because there's more storage in Bruns Pond, so you're offsetting that increased conveyance. But the answer is that it's the flow rates of the trunk compared to Wolf Creek, it's much lower, and it's just not going to be perceivable, the impact on Wolf Creek.
Thank you. Councillor Creasy?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. Peter Bowswood left me 15 or 20 questions here. Anyway, I'm just wondering if you could back up to slide number 28 for me for a sec. I was just a little confused on.
So there's not a number on here, so just tell me when I'm getting warm.
Ponding extents for proposed system.
I went the wrong way, didn't I? We had some stuff at the back as well.
That's fine, I think.
There you go.
This
That
one,
right there.
this
Oh.
one, and then this one.
That one.
Okay.
So now, certainly a more enviable looking situation than what we had earlier this year there for the water level. Is that the title you have there is ponding extents for proposed system, so that's with Bruns Pond excavated?
Yeah, it's with both upgrades, the trunk and the expansion to Bruns Pond.
Okay, because initially we had talked about some culverts extending underneath there, removing the sidewalk, a substantially bigger excavation than what's indicated there. So I just wanted to make sure that in fact this is the completed version?
Yes.
The excavated version?
Yeah.
So we'll be looking to Mr. Gowdy for some cost savings there, then, because it looks like substantial less work than what we'd initially discussed, so that's a good thing. I was also wondering if the proposed items, specifically the larger pipe twinning that you've presented as solutions to our problems, do they conflict in any way with the city's agreements with Alberta Environment for outflow rates and capacities?
Because it's a retrofit situation, Alberta Environment isn't going to be as sticky about if you're meeting a certain release rate. They're just going to be like, oh, people are getting flooded. Oh, okay, so what's your solution? Fair enough, kind of thing. Like, they're more strict in terms of release rates when it comes to new developments because it's a lot easier to build the pond into the development that allows you to meet a certain release rate. But when you're in a retrofit situation, as we are here, it's often not that easy to find the land to put a pond in downstream so that you could meet a certain release rate. So the Alberta Environment isn't going to be too sticky about release rates on this.
Okay, well that's encouraging to hear, because that's certainly an item that I had brought forward before and was a little concerned about, so that's good to hear that that's been addressed. Thank you.
Super, thank you. We are now at 6:30 where we have to have a public hearing, so if we can put you guys back in your seats for a few minutes. We'll go through the public hearing and bring you back to the table. Ian, I recognize that you have some questions. I have some comments as well for the boys before they carry on to their next one. Thanks, fellas. We'll see you in a few minutes.
Thank you.
We will move to number 5, public hearings, land use planning and land development, land use bylaw amendment 300.63. I now declare the statutory public hearing for addition of a use to C2 and C3 districts, bylaw 300.63 open at 6:31 p.m. They are open and being held pursuant to section 7, 8, 230, 606, and 692 of the Municipal Government Act 2000 as amended. I would like to have the legislative coordinator confirm what the purpose of the public hearing is, and that the public hearing notice was advertised in a local newspaper and what date, and that any written submission received and not included in the public hearing agenda package are read for the record. Nadine?
Mayor Christie, the purpose of the public hearing is in regards to bylaw 300.63, a bylaw to amend the land use bylaw number 300 to accommodate personal services as discretionary use in the Highway Commercial District C2 and the Transitional Highway Commercial C3 District. Notice of advertisement was done in accordance with section 606 of the Municipal Government Act. A notice of the public hearing for bylaw 300.63 was advertised in the local newspaper, the January 26th, February 2nd, and February 9th editions. And there were no written submissions received pertaining to bylaw 300.63.
Thank you very, very much. I would ask that all persons giving oral presentations to state their name and that the presentations are brief and to the point. I will also allow questions to the presenter from council after each presentation, and then a closing remarks, closing statement from the person who gave that presentation. The order of presentations will be the development officer, those in favor and those opposed. So we will turn the floor over to our development officer, Jen. Welcome.
Well, first of all, I'm not the development officer, I'm the planner. Hope that's
Sorry,
okay.
thank you.
So basically, the background of this application is that we received an application from a property owner who owns a property in the C3 district located along Highway 2A. The owner is seeking to rent the building associated with this property to a third party who seeks to use personal services as the use. As administration was reviewing the application, we decided to also apply for the same use to be added to the Highway Commercial District C2 in order to create more consistency amongst our commercial districts. The city's current C3 district does not include personal services as either permitted use or discretionary. As the use is not listed, it is not considered allowed in the district. This is also the same for the C2 district. Both districts apply along to various areas along Highway 2A and or Highway 12, and administration has proposed that the use be applied to both districts. Personal use is currently allowed in the following districts: R1A, R1B, R1C, R2, R4, RCE, RAC as a home occupation 2, and RCMU, C1, C4, C5 as permitted use, and CBP as discretionary use. Personal services is defined in the land use bylaw as the provision of a service to individuals on a commercial basis and includes but is not limited to such services as photographers, travel agencies, beauty salons, and dry cleaners. This bylaw was given first reading at the January 23rd meeting of council. The applicant has paid the $500 fee to cover the advertising costs associated with the notice required under the Act. And it meets the policies of the Land Use Bylaw and the Municipal Government Act. And administration has no other alternatives identified as first reading has only been given.
Thank you, Jen. Any questions for Jen from council? Members of council? All right, seeing none, I would ask that those in favor of the addition of a use come forward. I'd ask you to come to the table and use the mic. State your name and keep it brief. Mr. Williams. Welcome.
Push this?
Yep.
There we go. Thanks for having me. Boyd Williams. I'm acting on behalf of both parties. We have a young lady that is looking to seek out a new business, and I think in our community, we need these as much as we can get them. I sell real estate in Lacombe, in case anybody doesn't know. But I have had a swamping of phone calls in the last probably 3 to 4 months of people looking for smaller square footage and to start businesses. And I think these are the kind of people we need to bring into our community, because they not only bring employees, but they bring people who go to our schools, shop at our stores, and help out the whole economic development of our community. This is, I think, a good fit for this area, and I think extending it to the other areas is a good idea too. The biggest problem that she was concerned on the other areas that I showed her was parking. And I think on another matter that I've dealt with you guys before, parking is a huge issue with you. And this is a great fit because of your new service road and also because of the parking on location. This is a great location for her and also for her patrons. So I don't have anything else. There's lots of on-site parking. There is obviously the landlord is willing to work with the tenant on whatever it takes, being that he paid the application fee up front, and we're hoping that we can get this through.
Thank you very much. Any questions from council? Mr. Williams? Any closing statements, Blaine?
No.
Thank you very much for coming out.
You bet. Thank you for having me.
I would ask any of those opposed to the addition of uses to come forward and speak. Seeing none, I would ask that any person deemed to be affected or who wishes to be heard come forward. Seeing none, I will declare this public hearing closed at 6:38 p.m. Thank you very much. We will take a 5-minute break, quick break here, and be back at Land Use Bylaw Amendment 300.63. We'll go to second and third readings. Jen, is that what you? Bring her forward.
Administration recommends that you have second and third reading for this bylaw.
Thank you so much. Councillor Kite?
I move that we'll go to second reading on bylaw 300.64. 3, sorry.
Thank you. Any discussion, questions? Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I just wanted to make the point that looking at the overall picture by adding this in makes things much smoother for down the road. So I'm very happy that the planning department added these extras in as Mr. Hellman indicated.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you. And we're looking for third reading tonight as well. Councillor Connick?
I would so move that we get the third and final, or just third reading for bylaw 300, third and final, 300.63.
Thank you. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you. We will go back to the stand tech now. Let's talk. Brad, come on back up. And I believe Councillor Foster will go to yours.
Thanks, Mayor Christie.
Questions there? Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you, gentlemen, for the information. The technical side is certainly with you guys, and that's where it should be. And Matt, working closely with you. I guess my biggest question is looking at the problem areas that we're looking at right now. design feature, we've got the prices, we know we're going ahead with that. What I'm most interested in hearing is looking ahead with the computerized modeling that we've done and the next phases of our residential community and commercial and everything else. That have we looked beyond the borders of today into tomorrow to make sure that we can scale those things accordingly? Because I guess what I'm looking for is that we don't get caught in a piece where we have to start retrofitting the retrofit.
I'm gonna go to you go first, Brad, and I'll follow up.
We're in the process of preparing the stormwater management plan report, and so that report will have a multitude of figures, and some of those figures will visually display the modeling results. So there may be a figure that shows the roadway trap load depths in, basically it might highlight all the roadway trap loads where the ponding depth is greater than a foot, and then so that can be used as an aid for future redevelopment or planning, just to highlight the areas where the system's capacity is already stressed, and so that you can plan that into your future development, basically. So there'll be those kind of figures in the report that help to educate you as to where your system is stressed already.
So I think what you're really asking though is that with this model it's going to become a working tool both from the planning end of it and from the engineering end of it. So let's say there's a major redevelopment in downtown in 10 years or 15 years from now, then you can use that model to look at how the existing system is going to work, and then if you're going to do any upgrades or replacement, what needs to be done at that time. So as Brad said, it's broken up into basins. So typically your basins don't normally change. You can interconnect basins and you can take and do different things in the future as development or redevelopment occurs. So this tool will give that to you. It's GIS based, so everything can be imported into any GIS software and any GIS platform that you have. You know, it's expandable. It's used not just for the existing city of Lacombe, but say you get another application for another quarter section, all of that can be bolted onto the model at the time, and through your servicing standards, through Matt and his team, they can request that be done as part of that that servicing study and that modeling. So yeah, it's going to be something just like a water model, just like a sanitary model that can be maintained and expanded. And you know, not that I can put your mind at ease, but if we're going to do this upgrade for this section of the city, it's not that you're going to have to come back and do it in 2 years or 10 years or 20 years from now. There's always going to be constant upgrades to the infrastructure, and so as long as the model's updated, then you'll be able to I guess stay ahead of the curve. I guess I did bring up one comment about, you know, changing storm events, and you know, obviously we hope it doesn't rain too much here in central Alberta, but you know, there are some things that, you know, are changing as the years go on as well, but there should be enough robustness in the upgrades that, you know, you're not going to see something that's going to create problems, you know, in the future.
Thanks, gentlemen. I guess you do put my mind at ease a little bit in that we are looking at the proper modeling, and I hear the word GIS, which makes Michael very happy that all of these things can be integrated, and that we've put a lot of work and effort into it. Another thing that I heard earlier was the fact that we don't know where those cross connections are, and I guess this will be built into our system as we go forth, as we find them and build them in. So it will help the whole picture. So thank you.
Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I've got just a couple of questions, if I may. You speak to how this is phase one, and maybe this question is a little premature, but can we look forward to any other expensive phases, or are we going to wait till the rest of the report is done, or what's your inkling on that first off?
Again, I'll let Brad go first.
These two phases should address the drainage issues associated in the Meadows and Bruns Pond area. There won't be phase 3 and 4.
Not for this area, but I mean other areas inclusive in the city.
Well, those will be
Addressed it once you get through there.
those will be brought forward by the city, basically. Like they'll be precipitated by a resident that has an issue or something, and then
Well, I'm just saying, like, for example, English Estates had a lot of flooding.
Right.
Now, I know Bruns Pond expansion will address some of that, but is there any, you know, I mean, again, I may be being a little premature, but is there, you know, a need for a larger pipe in that part of the community as well, or you don't know?
So, one of the things that's being done, with English Estates is there's gonna be the twinning of the sanitary force main for the two lift stations, so that'll increase conveyance capacity out of that area. And I'm not sure if, I know that a lot of this stuff, that we presented tonight, the infiltration and inflow component of the longer term plan for the city in terms of dealing with inflow and infiltration, as we all agree, we don't know where all the things like sump pumps are connected into people's systems, and are people's lots graded properly? Do they get the drainage away from their houses? There's all these intangibles that need to be put forth to the public, educating the public, and then with the design standards and through the model and through the study, there's going to be these other areas that are going to be identified, and some of them will be very low cost items, and they may be very specific items to a specific problem, and then there might be some bigger, longer term plans that you might have a trunk line that's, say, 40 years old and it's approaching its design life, and it's going to need to be upgraded or replaced anyways, so you try to coordinate that into your capital planning work. I understand, I know what you're trying to get at here, is that are we going to be spending another how many millions of dollars in the future?
Yeah. I was just hoping you had already looked in your crystal ball, but I guess we'll just have to wait to see.
Our impression with English Estates at this time is that it's primarily a sanitary system capacity issue. And so the second part of our presentation is just going to address that.
And my other question, I think you answered it already, but in looking at this, and Councilor Rempel alluded to it as well, you go from a 900 to a 1050 to a 1200 and then back down to a 1050. But I think you had said that you're going to account for that by grade, right? Because my concern is that 1200 is full, which would be a heck of a lot of water, of course.
Right.
Coming back down to a 1050, you're going to have a bottleneck there, but you're saying that the grade will take care of that, correct?
Yeah, I was gonna say, if I have a little wheelie here, I don't know where it went, towards the, if we went to, say, that hydraulic grade line, I don't know if Michael can find it quickly, you'll see that it's just like with those ponding depths. When there's ponding, if we're allowed to have some ponding there, and if the grade line's steeper going across the highway, then you don't need as large a trunk. So, we'll make that final determination through the detailed design, so that'll be when we're going to be dotting all the i's and crossing the t's relative to the actual final design that will be going out for tender and then constructed this year.
So you could potentially go to a 1200 if you discover in the final design that maybe the 1050 isn't the best idea.
It could, yes.
Oh, and so then our costs could go up, or the costs that you've roughly given us, we'll take that into account.
The original cost that we gave you had a budget for a 1200 pipe going the full length.
Okay.
So already just the north half is in all likelihood going to be reduced down to a 900 and a 1050. So there's already yeah. So we still think that the pricing that we gave you is still reasonable.
Thank you.
Councillor Creasy?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I just had one other question, and you had alluded to the fact that we can bolt on additional areas or whatever as those come on stream for the city to this model, which is certainly an economic way to go. And I was curious, with basically an electronic format of this, does a copy of this become ours, or is it the Stantec own the model, or how does that all work? I mean, I'm sure you can appreciate that engineering firms change and get bought out and whatnot as time goes on, and I just wanted to kind of follow. In the past, we've had problems with as-built drawings and whatnot, and I expect that electronic information is the model's version of that same thing. So I just wanted to know what the implications of that were.
Yeah, to answer your question, Grant, and to put you at ease, that the city will have a copy of the model. A lot of municipalities, they have to decide whether they're going to elect to physically purchase the software to run the model, but you will have control of the physical model, so that if you ever needed to provide it to another consultant, say a developer as an example, and they needed to add on to it, there is that ability to share that information back and forth. So, no, we're certainly happy to share.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. I would imagine that you and your counterparts are quite busy in this aspect across the country, as the Insurance Bureau of Canada has stated that the water and sewer backup claims have increased 20% over the last decade. So I'm sure you and your counterparts are quite busy across Canada, and that Lacombe is not specialized in this area, that we are not the only community across Canada that has this issue. So we're looking forward to working with you with this project, and down the road becoming more proactive in keeping up with our system and working with it as we grow as a city. So and as I look to your keys of success here, I think we're already well on the path to success with regards to the partnership approach here with Stantec and the City of Lacombe. The community education involvement, I just want to thank you as well for coming out a couple weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, to meet with our community and help educate some of the residents of Lacombe, and there's already been a writing in the paper with regards to their responsibilities and what they know. So I appreciate you coming out and helping out with that education, which will be ongoing. And now I guess we hand it off to yourselves and Mr. Gowdy to work on the well-managed construction end of it. So I'm looking forward to working with you as the rest of us are here. So thank you for this presentation tonight. Any further discussion on this one? Go ahead, Todd.
No, I'd just like to thank everybody for having the patience. I know that some of this stuff can be a bit overwhelming initially, but we can continue to break it down, and if you have any questions specifically, if you want to either put them through Matt or any other forms, we can certainly try and answer them after the fact.
Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Thank you. So we'll move on to the wastewater. Thanks, Brad. Coming out.
I'm switching horses, so Matt, do you want me just to kind of jump in and...
Do you want to just introduce Johnny and Stephen?
Yeah, I will. So the two other fine young gentlemen that we have tonight, Stephen Weninger with the PI. Stephen's one of our intermediate engineers. He looks after a lot of our wastewater projects and other infrastructure projects. He's currently looking after, as an example, the City of Red Deer's wastewater treatment plant upgrades. And then Johnny Key, one of our technical specialists, both on the modeling and on water and wastewater. So the two of them have prepared this presentation for you relative to our wastewater study. So Stephen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Todd. And just because we have fewer slides in this one doesn't mean that you can't ask lots of questions.
Not sure who's talking to you.
Okay, so here are the objectives of the study. Just review kind of the background of your existing wastewater treatment facility, assess its performance, given how it should be performing, generally referred to as the overall efficiency of the system. Evaluate the inflow and infiltration impacts on treatment capacity broadly, and just for the city as a whole. What's that inflow and infiltration doing to your wastewater plant? And then project midterm capacity needs, about that 10-year horizon kind of thing. And then what upgrade options are available if needed. So background, where we started from was the 2009 municipal census, carried it forward at a 3% annual growth rate.
you know, not overly aggressive, but reasonably conservative, just in the middle there. You're a member of the Central Alberta Regional Wastewater Master Plan. You endorsed that a number of years ago. That plan calls for, over the long term, being part of this regional system for centralized treatment at Red Deer. So acknowledging that, that's why we're looking at that midterm solution, because long term the goal is to send your raw wastewater back to Red Deer for treatment. Currently, your wastewater plant is an aerated lagoon system, which is very common in communities your size. Generally, once you hit about a 20,000 horizon, Alberta environment forces you to go to a mechanical system. Aerated lagoon systems are overall great in that they're operationally beneficial. It's not overly onerous. There's lots of storage capacity on site. The negatives are if you have a process upset, it can take a long time to work its way through the system. Other negatives are the large footprint that it requires, so if you don't have room to grow, you're kind of hamstrung, which is a possible issue for you long term. Your plant license has a twice per year discharge with option for a third one as needed. So we'll talk about the March discharge or the earlier discharge as one of your bottlenecks that we've been seeing. And right now you have a 25 milligram per liter carbonaceous biological oxygen demand limit per liter of wastewater effluent. So on this chart here, the main takeaways here are the red circles should be under the red line. The blue circles are just the quality of the wastewater coming in and correspond to your ledger on the left there. And then the red circles is your treatment, what you're seeing coming out of the plant. So that AN 25, that's your license limit. So as you see, your red circles are well under. Another thing you'll notice is if you look kind of in the early spring, like the runoff season, and then to start the rain season, you generally see a dip every year in there. And we think there's a good chance that's related to inflow and infiltration into the system. So the bad news about inflow and infiltration into the system is that it uses up a lot of your capacity in your treatment plant as well as your sanitary collection system. The good news is that it makes your wastewater effluent cleaner, but if you look at the rest of the year, you're not in a problem situation anyhow. Actually, go back, John, here, a few things I didn't touch on there. Projecting your capacity out, you're good to about a population of about 15,000, and that's including your major meat processor as well as the biorefineries. Next big potential issue is ammonia treatment. Ammonia is not in your Alberta Environment Treatment License right now. However, it's a cause for concern for the future for a variety of reasons. It's toxic to fish, federal DFO issues, and Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment. There have guidelines that we're supposed to maintain. So the LC50 is one of those federal guidelines. It's how many trout live when exposed to the fish for a certain amount of time. And what you see in that curve there is where your ammonia should perform in order to pass your LC50. So on the y-axis there, we have your ammonia concentration. On the x-axis there, we have your pH. So what you're seeing, sorry, with those circles there, with the filled circles and the empty circles, those are off of your last two lagoon cells that can discharge into Wolf Creek. And this was taken in June of this year, the results here, and it shows you're right at the line in a few of the readings, plus you're actually over it in one of the cases. Downstream is your X's and your squares. It shows that the ammonia has become diluted into the creek as a whole. So immediately after the plant, it's a problem, dilution in the creek. makes it less so. The third issue is impacts of inflow and infiltration on the system. So we talked a lot about storm system with your storm events, especially when you get that excessive ponding that Brad was talking about earlier, like that 2-foot ponding. Oftentimes that ponding will spill over into your sanitary system and then use up all your capacity there, cause downstream flooding, all sorts of other issues here. When you look at this chart, you'll see the bars on the graph there are rainfall events, and then you'll see the dots are the impact on your storm system, or on your sanitary system rather, coming in. So the blue dots are the combined at the plant, whereas the red and green dots are from your north and south lift stations respectively. So a couple things to note out of here. What we're seeing is especially a peak in the green dots there, your south lift station. So there are a couple issues with that. South lift station, we know for a fact then that you have considerable I&I coming in. North lift station, we do see some peaks. They're a little harder to see underneath those green dots, but one of the problems is your north lift station can only pump out at a certain rate that's being exceeded on at least one storm event of the past year. It's not an occurrence that you've seen frequently. Chris Houston has told us it's happened maybe 3 times that he can recall having heard of. But it could be, this chart could be hiding a problem in your north end of the system as well. Okay, so we took your flow and loading projections into account, as well as your current data coming in. So your per capita biological oxygen demand is right where it should be, a little lower than Innisfail's, a little higher than Olds. So you can brag to Innisfail about your BOD being better than theirs. Maybe you have a better diet. I'm not sure what the cause is exactly, but it's right in that normal range. There, industrial, we looked at the meat plant and the biorefinery there, and took those results and incorporated those along with that 3% annual growth rate. A few causes for concern when we saw the biorefinery. You look at the design BOD row about midway down there. That's 500 milligrams per liter. That's kind of high, and that's after their internal plant operations. So if there's an upset at that plant, that is a cause for concern. We think it could be in the order of 10,000 if their process fails, depending on how bad an upset, how much flow gets through. Something like that could be a major problem. So it's certainly recommended that that plant have a contingency plan, and that regular monitoring is in place to make sure it stays under control. So proposed interim discharge criteria. I just mentioned briefly Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment there. Their broad standard 25 milligrams per liter of biological oxygen demand, as well as 25 milligrams per liter of whole suspended solids. On the TSS issue, you're fine. You've been fine up to date. You're fine with your projections going forward. Not a real concern. There's a requirement for receiving water impact assessment to define where you should be at with your other standards. So you see at the bottom bullet there, BOD, TSS, ammonia, total phosphorus, and those would all be set with receiving water impact assessment. That's also a requirement of Alberta Environments. It's in your current license that you have a proposal into them by October this year, just saying how your methodology for carrying out that study. It's not that the study be done itself. They might want you to do just a 1-year study. They might want multi-years on it. So that's a plan we have to develop together with the city and environment. So your upgrade needs here, we talked about the BOD with the 15,000 population limit there. Your inflow and infiltration, calculated out, it's using up about 20% of your capacity. What we're seeing right now, in a late spring issue like you had last year, your lagoons are getting very full by the end of the year, and if your ammonia levels are high like they were last year, it really puts your operators in a difficult situation where they want to be releasing that water to empty out your lagoons, but the ammonia is high. So you combine those two issues together and we have a potential problem. So we'd like to get a handle of that inflow and infiltration pretty quickly, bring down that storage in the system. In the summer, we're a little bit less concerned. This year, with all those issues, you got your lagoons very full to the point of needing to discharge, but you still didn't have to resort to that optional third discharge for the year. Ammonia again, we got to find a short-term solution for that ammonia before the regional system comes on. So right now you're kind of at that cusp. Once that becomes a mandatory reporting requirement, you're going to need that solution in place. So here we go through your ammonia handling options. So right now, in general, lagoon wastewater treatment plants are not very good at breaking down ammonia. Right there in that figure is how ammonia gets broken down with bacteria and temperature with their help into nitrates. If you have any questions on those ones, Johnny will field that because he has his master's and he's a lot smarter than us. But some candidate technologies identified. Ammonia stripping, it's essentially just addition of chemical to break it down. There are a few issues. It takes your pH of your water up a lot higher, not really good for the receiving environment. There are odor issues with it. Operationally, it's not very cost effective either, and it's really operationally intensive in how it has to be handled. Aquamat, there are a couple of technologies similar to Aquamat out there. What it does is it provides surface area for the bacteria that help you break down ammonia. Gives them essentially a place to live in your system. It's easy to install. It's similar to like a baffle curtain in a reservoir. You can kind of think of it that way. The most northern application of it was in Columbia, Illinois. So it achieved really good results there, 3 in the summer and 10 in the winter. Right now, Red Deer is trying to achieve ammonia of 5 and 10 summer and winter. So achieving that here is pretty reasonable. However, whether or not that's achievable in Lacombe, just because it's achievable in Columbia, Illinois, it's unproven at this point. So no history in colder climates. There's a similar technology out there, floating islands, that's been kind of trying to apply itself in colder climates as well. You may have heard of that. Again, not really proven in climates such as this. And similar idea, just again providing surface area for the bacteria so they can work on breaking down your ammonia. The next one is the BioLac wave oxidation system. This one would be like an overhaul of your plant. Essentially, it's creating wave action in there to build up the kinetic energy, help the bugs do their work. Problem with this one is it's a major retrofit of your existing plant. It changes kind of the way your aeration happens there, and it takes down large portions of your cells through alcohol construction in the summers as well. So we like to avoid something that's as onerous on your plant as possible. The Sager system, submerged attached growth reactors. This thing is ingenious and it's really simple. It's essentially taking a lot of rocks, burying them, pumping water through it, and it's almost as simple as that. And it sounds ridiculous when you say it, but it's been extremely effective. an add-on system at the end of the lagoon. We have a schematic of how we could incorporate it here. We have some mulch insulation, and then, like I said, gravel and pumping some oxygen, let the bugs do their thing. Has been piloted. It's been piloted pretty successfully in Lloydminster for the past few years. Definitely not foolproof, but definitely worth a good hard look here. And it's been piloted in a few other, Glencoe, Ontario, Dawson Creek, which would be even colder climate than Lloydminster. I've been working on projects in Lloyd the past few years, and Lloyd is generally colder than central Alberta. Another option, engineered wetland. Once that's in place and the aquatic and biotic environment are taking over, that one's very operationally simple. It's letting nature do its course. You can't have your winter discharges, but right now you can't have your winter discharges anyhow, so you do need storage. Choose your ammonia treatment goals. We're in the middle of implementing one in Avonlea, Saskatchewan right now. Bad thing about the engineered wetlands though is it takes up a lot of space. At present your plant's pretty hemmed in there. You would need to be able to secure more property for like a major surface expansion. Here's a more detailed look at the Sager system, and maybe it's a little bit foreshadowing on our recommendations here. If you see in the bottom right corner, those are a couple of existing complete mix cells that aren't being used. So the first arrow is the cells right beside those. You would go through those complete mixed aeration cells and then through your partially mixed aerated cell. And then you follow the blue arrow back to the Sager system. It goes through there and then into your storage cells. That would be your summer operation. In the winter, after your second blue arrow, the one heading to the left, you would then take that red arrow to the left and we get a little bit more treatment before going through the Sager system, and then it would go into storage. You have existing Kaiser blowers at your plant site that could be converted over to that use. I mentioned the simplicity of the system before, the gravel bed. Generally that gravel is just placed in like wooden forms. It's almost ridiculously simple in some of those respects. However, it is a patented technology, unfortunately. And then I mentioned the recirculation in the winter already. Design parameters there, pretty high influent ammonia. We're projecting there just to be a little bit conservative to make sure we can retain our effluent results. Next up. So here's kind of a comparison of your upgrade options versus a few options that go more toward your long-term regionalization goals. So your Sager system, we talked about that extensively as well. Disadvantages, it's a short-term system. That bed will probably kind of fill itself out and you won't be effectively able to put the oxygen through over that 10-year period. So taking it beyond that period, making that a long-term solution is probably not the way to go. We'd probably be looking at doing something more permanent if you wanted it to last more than 10 years. Either that or we'd have to build a much bigger bed. The wetland, again, nature solution. It's great except for the need for space, which we're hemmed in at the current plant site. Costs would be reasonably comparable to what we're looking at for the Sager. A few other options we looked at, raw water transmission, or raw wastewater transmission rather. So starting the regional system up, taking it back to Red Deer, so just projecting from that wastewater master plan from a number of years back, just putting in the construction cost escalation from that time. We're in the $30 to $35 million range. It's definitely not a detailed estimate, but that's telling you your ballpark long term. There may be funding opportunities there through the regional grants, but overall it looks fairly cost prohibitive without those grant formulas working for you. sediment transmission is another one. It's coming off your plant, but not discharging into Wolf Creek, not discharging downstream into the Battle River, but actually taking it back to the Red Deer River Basin, where we know that the dilution will be there. Your ammonia shouldn't be an issue because of that. And it gives you lots of options there, but again, it's cost prohibitive. So conclusions and recommendations, again, we want to reduce that II, get that capacity back in the system, especially for that winter turnover. Summer as well. I guess it's great to have more capacity and cost you money to treat that II coming into your system. Your existing BOD removal is operating very efficiently, and we're pretty pleased with that. It should be good up until about 15,000 people, and that includes your major industrials as well. We're recommending your Sager system for your ammonia reduction. There is a knock-on improvement on the BOD as well. However, that wouldn't be why you're doing it. You'd be doing it for your ammonia. And your receiving water study assessment as part of your license. You'll want to be proceeding with that fairly soon. And we invite any questions.
Super, thank you, gentlemen. Questions? Councillor Creasy, I'm sure you've got Councillor Belsma's list there.
Small list.
Thank you.
I was just curious with the I&I problem, is that, or do you have any data, is that mostly at the household level, or is this at the street level contamination? Where does most of this occur?
Well, your I&I won't happen typically in the house, let me restart. The inflow component of it would typically happen in the house. The infiltration component will be leaky pipes, things like that. If you want to scroll back to what we're seeing with our rainfall events here.
I can certainly appreciate that. I'm just curious as far as the overall volumes of both of them. Like, where do we get the most bang for our buck? Where do we need to identify the problems first?
We need to identify the problem first, and I think to answer that question more intelligently, what we are seeing is there's a definite peak. You get a big rainfall event, you have a big II event. To me, that says that you certainly have an inflow problem. However, the infiltration problem can happen more with like high groundwater tables, and that's getting into your pipes. And that can happen, a rising groundwater table from a rainfall event, and happen over the weeks after a rainfall event even too, and we are certainly seeing some of that as well. You're seeing that peak rainfall event happen, and then you're seeing your flows go back to normal slowly after. So to me that says you have both issues.
Okay.
I'm gonna jump in.
I'm going to jump in and add a few other comments as well. So Steve and I actually did an infiltration inflow study in the city of Red Deer for the East Hill area of that community, and what we have in the city of Lacombe is we have 2 lift stations that we can monitor the flows through. So there's no other upstream data to know where the inflow and where the infiltration is coming from. So those are our 2 baselines. So when you look at the dots, those are the 2 lift stations and the flow going through them. In the one lift station and the north lift station, it kind of peaks out if you get too much rain, and that's why we're doing the improvements with the additional force main to improve capacity and conveyance. But what ends up happening is with the inflow and infiltration, we need to back up into the system to understand where the issues are coming from. So in the city of Red Deer, we were able actually, through where the flow meters were, actually determine a range of an area where we thought this inflow was coming from. And it took the city, I think it was a couple of years, Stephen, but they actually found a large cross connection between the stormwater and the sanitary system, and I think it was about 100 liters a second that was getting in there under the large storm events. So that would be where you'd see a lot of these higher peaks, is if, say, somebody a long time ago connected a storm system lead or cross-connected them, between manholes or something. So those things aren't always evident initially, but as we can get some additional data, then we can start to to find those real big issues, those low-hanging fruit, the things that you can resolve quickly without spending a lot of money. The next part of it is that when we get into we'll call it the infiltration side of things, and you can also call it inflow. So some houses, and again I'll relate to the city of Red Deer, is that older subdivisions had weeping tiles connected directly into their sanitary system. So if they didn't have good drainage getting away from their houses, water's getting down into the weeping tile, then it's going into their sanitary system. As well, if people have sump pumps in their houses and they're not pumping to surface, then to surface or into a storm system, then that means they're pumping into the sanitary system. So that sump pump after a rain event, may come on for a day, a week, a month. Sometimes sump pumps run all year round if you're in low areas. So if you're putting that kind of continuous pumping into the system, then you're going to add increased volume and you're going to increase those peaks under those larger rain events. So the next item is, and it's a benefit of the storm upgrades, is that as Brad showed, if you have 2 or 3 feet of ponding on a street, at those low points there's always a sanitary manhole and a storm manhole usually. So that's what Matt and the Public Works crews are going to be looking at. Say the spring example, going in, and you can buy special pans that can be inserted into the sanitary manholes, so that limits the amount of infiltration water under, say, a storm event where you do get some ponding or surcharging at those low points. So those are other ways that you can start to mitigate some of that inflow and infiltration. So going back to what you asked initially, is that we got to go upstream in the system a little bit to see if we can identify some real obvious issues. There has been one. There's a small lift station that's currently connected into the sanitary. So you have to go in and identify all these different items and then remove them from the system. And so it does take a little while to work through them.
Thank you. So I guess basically then, as far as the cross-contamination, you really don't have any supplemental data from other communities, whatever, that says, I don't know, X amount of percent of the inflow is coming from poorly connected weeping tile systems or pumping systems, or if it's actually at the municipal level where the mains themselves that have been cross-connected.
Well, actually, we actually do have, timed out on me. We actually do have a lot of data. I know when I first moved here in '99, we worked with Sylvan Lake, and they actually came up with a bylaw where you have to go in, and we worked with them through the whole infiltration and inflow. So we monitored different areas of that city, and then determined what the issues were, and then they actually created a bylaw that people had to disconnect all of their sanitary sump pumps from their sanitary system. So they took a very proactive approach, and at that time we also did upgrading to their Marina Bay lift station and had a direct force main to their Longboat Landing lift station, I think it's called. And so that was one of the first projects I was involved in when I moved here, was all the flooding in Lacombe. And then the city of Red Deer, like I said, they're attacking it from some of the larger inflow components, and then through some of the pipe upgrades, it could be a lining issue. So we have to still break it down. So each community is going to be different. We did a lot of flow monitoring for the communities to the south of Red Deer as well. So we have all of the different data from the different communities, and so we can make estimates based on what we see are typical, but each community is still an individual community that way.
And then as far as identifying these things, is there a hard and fast way of doing it through, I don't know, you use dyes and stuff, or is it a more of a trial and error thing, or how do you go about identifying the problem areas?
Well, firstly, like I said, you have, say, 2 lift stations, and as you move upstream, it's like a tree. All the sewer lines are going to come in, so we might pick 2 or 3 key locations and monitor flows over the summer, and see when there's a large storm event how that reach of pipes. So as Brad showed you the different basins, we might identify, say there's 3 major basins, to go in and try and identify the II from those areas. We can do that through flow monitoring. The only not bad part of flow monitoring is if you don't have large storm events, though, during the summer, it may give you less desirable results because you don't see the 1 in 20 or the 1 in 50 or the 1 in 100 year storm events. A lot of the best management practices, I think, and Matt could comment, I think you, as the city, are gonna prepare some pamphlets that can be distributed out, you know, throughout the community to, you know, help people in terms of some of the things like lot grading and some of the things to get the water away from their houses, which also keeps the water out of the sewer system if there's, you know, say weeping tile or sump pumps that are directly connected. So I guess in terms of that data, that needs to be gathered so that we can do a better assessment.
Councillor Foster?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I'm not sure if this question is for you gentlemen or for the city, but when we do the opportunity for our third discharge, I guess what I'm looking at is there more opportunity to change the opportunity dates? Does that help us? If you understand what I'm saying, is that if we have to go to that third one, when can it be? And if we did the other two discharges at different times, would it affect the levels that we're expected to do? I guess that's phase one of my questions. Is that making sense, guys?
Yeah, do you want to go first,
Yeah,
Matt?
let me jump in on that. The problem, although we have 3 discharges, there's really only one discharge that matters, if you will, and that's in the spring. We're not allowed to discharge, basically, once the creek freezes up until the creek unfreezes. And that period is really our limiting factor for both storage, because it's could be up to a 6 to 8 month period, and for toxicity effluent. You don't get the same kind of treatment happening over the winter months, just because of the lower temperatures, and so you end up with high ammonia and high volumes. And so adding the third discharge, it really doesn't help, because you can't add it between the months of September and say April when you need it. You can only add it between the months of April and September when we're in a pretty good situation already. So basically because of the way Wolf Creek flows, we really can't, it really doesn't help us to go to the third, or even if the 10th discharge, it doesn't really help us, unfortunately.
Yeah, just a supplemental to Matt's comment is that the key for the spring discharge is to be able to discharge it as early as we can in the spring. So there's 2 components to that. There's obviously the fact that you can discharge it because the creek is available to accept it. And then the second thing is that, you know, is the ammonia levels at a low enough level that we can discharge it. So, you know, this year as an example, that's where that discharge had to be delayed because of the ammonia levels. And so if we can get that under control and have it so that we can release as early in the spring, then we get a more balanced release between the fall discharge and the spring discharge. There is still potentially some advantage of being able to discharge in the summer, but as Matt said, it's not typically needed because ammonia and the treatment during the summer is not an issue for the fall discharge. The only issue would be is that if there was significant rainfalls, then that could be addressed on an as required basis, and the city could request to have that third discharge in a fairly timely manner.
Thank you. Thank you. The other question I have is in respect to the Sager component. Any idea what the cost of that? Huh? So it is? Okay. I didn't see the figure, but it really is a 10-year window. That's basically what we're hearing. Is it's only going to add another 10 years to our system, where we still have to look at that regionalization.
I'll come in first. Matt might have some additional comments. Is that right now everybody realizes that there is a limited footprint that they're working within, unless there's future expansion of the facility from a volume end of it. The upgrades that we did to increase the treatment component, so we meet all the BOD limits as Stephen has shown on the graph. So that's not an issue. The issue will be, though, is once you get closer to that 20,000 people, things are going to change for the city in terms of your requirements for treatment. So similar to other communities in this situation, is that
we're trying to look at what we call a short-term or mid-term solution, and obviously you still have to keep your eye on the long-term solution, which is, you know, looking at potentially going back to the city of Red Deer, potentially going back to the Red Deer River. You could technically expand your plant and put in a mechanical plant, but you might find that that's not as cost effective, both from a cost point of view and from a funding point of view. And those are things that, you know, have been looked at in the past regarding the Central Alberta wastewater study. And I can get here pretty fast from Red Deer, so I'm sure the effluent can get back pretty fast too.
Thank you. Councillor Koenig?
So so just to I want to clarify this. So the 4 million that you're projecting for this Sager system, this will take care of the ammonium problem we have, and you're saying it will then, see that, and I struggle with the 20,000 because you say 15, we'll get to 15 right now for BOD as is. With the upgrade to the Sager, but then you're saying we can get to that 20,000, and now, is that what we're saying in terms of BOD?
Well, actually, I'll let Stephen or Johnny comment.
So the Sager system, normally they will accept the Sager system is designed to accept a BOD level of 30, even you can shoot as high as 40. So in that term, well, the aeration system in front of the Sager system is designed to treat the BOD. So in that case, because your population grows, your BOD loading grows, the aeration system in front of the Sager system can treat the BOD down to 40 milligram per liter. That's okay for the Sager system. And because the bacteria in the Sager system can also treat BOD in that term, so the BOD treatment capacity will be increased. That is how we design the Sager system.
Yeah, I understand it, but I guess I'm wondering in terms of population levels. Right now, you're saying we're good to 15,000 with the system we have. The main issue we have is the ammonia. That's the Sager system. But then the Sager system, as it says here, will expand the BOT treatment capacity of the facility. So then we should have that extra 5,000 in population up to 20,000. So we're good then. So we hit about the 20,000. Or does it get us only to about 17,000? You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah. We did a calculation run on that. It's about 17,000.
17.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's right.
I think the bigger issue is that you're going to run out of physical volume. That's the crux of it. Regardless of the treatment side of it, we can do different things to continue to work on enhancement of the treatment. You still have to deal with the volume, and so, you know, through II and through public education and, you know, other initiatives to reduce water consumption, because we didn't really talk about even, you know, reducing water consumption, but, you know, as you educate the public and you know, if they can bring their water consumption down, you know, 5 or 10%, that's going to benefit the longevity of your system as well. So we're trying to say, okay, what's going to happen in the next 10 years? And then within that 10 years, can Mayor Christie and the rest of council convince the upper levels of government to fund this next initiative?
And then you spoke of high ammonia levels, and we were over last year. Was that the first time, Matt, or have there been other years?
There has been other years where we've had to delay releases because of failed tests, and there has been cases like Pinoca this year that was why they got fined, was their ammonia level. So it's certainly something that's being watched, and that we're very watchful of.
Yeah, there's one other item too, and there is the option to go out and clean out some of the sludge in the lagoons. That will add some additional capacity as well. It's fairly expensive, but, you know, at the same time, you know, that's another, you know, egg in the basket that could be used if required.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for your riveting presentation. And I thank you guys for that information. Somebody has to do it, and we really appreciate that. And I think what I hear you saying with regards to I&I and cross connections residentially, there you can't detect those. We can find the larger ones that spill in there. So by education of our community members and the public in the residential cross connections is the only way we can detect those. Is that correct?
Yeah, and again, if you want to do some surveys and things with the public, certainly I think they'd be happy to get engaged.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, gentlemen. And I see Mike hiding back there he was here for backup. And just thank you all for coming tonight and bringing forth this information.
Yeah, thank you. If anybody needs anything, we're on red here, so we can be contacted. Thank you.
Thanks, fellas. Can I get a resolution to accept this presentation as information? Councillor Foster?
So moved.
Thank you very much. All those in favor? So carried. All right, we will move along to land use planning and land development. Elizabeth Park Development Area, Phase 10 and Phase 11. Bylaw amendment, first reading for the rezone. Bylaw 300.64. Jen, you're up.
Thanks. The city has received an application for the redesignation of Phase 10 and 11 of Elizabeth Park Development from the current future designation district to residential medium lot single detached dwellings district, which is R1B. In addition, we are currently working on the Phase 10, in addition, Phase 10 will also feature the designation of an municipal reserve parcel to be zoned as P, public and institutional use. This change is presented as an amendment to the land use bylaw 300 via bylaw 300.64. The city has received the application from BEMCO Land Surveying on behalf of Shantro Developments. This rezoning will help facilitate the development of Elizabeth Park Phase 10. These lands are contained within the College Heights Outline Plan. Proposed area of land is legally described as northeast 3140 26 west of the 4th. The amendment has been done in accordance with sections 606 and 640 of the MGA and Part 5 of the Land Use Bylaw. Council may determine to review, circulate, and adopt any amendment to Land Use Bylaw for redistricting, and an application for subdivision has been submitted for Phase 10, and it's being worked on concurrently. The proposed rezoning meets the requirements of the North Area Structure Plan as well as the College Heights Outline Plan. There are maps for you to take a gander at. The applicant has paid the $1,000 fee to cover advertising costs associated with the notice. All the requirements meet the Land Use Bylaw, Municipal Government Act, North Area Structure Plan, Elizabeth Park Outline Plan, and College Heights Outline Plan. And we recommend a first reading be given and that a public hearing be held on March 12th at 6:30.
Thank you very much, Jen. Discussion on that? Councillor Creasy?
Thanks, Mayor Christie. I was just a little confused with this future designation labeling that we have on this area. Is this just a natural progression of a subdivision area like this? That's all it is. Okay. I would certainly be happy to put forward the motion then that we go to first reading on bylaw 300.64.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All those in favor? So carried. And I believe you're looking for a public hearing to be set as well, Jen?
Yes, that's for March 12th.
Councillor Connick?
I would so move that public hearing be held on Monday, March 12th, 2012 at 6:30 p.m. to consider bylaw 300.64.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? All those in favor? So carried. Thank you. That takes us down to bylaw enforcement and safety services business licenses, bylaw amendment, solid waste collectors, bylaw 189.7 and bylaw 316.7. Michael?
Thank you, Your Worship. These bylaws are in conjunction, and they deal with the provision of commercial solid waste collection services within the city of Lacombe. This was brought before council, or has been brought before council on 2 separate occasions. The most recent being November 3rd, with regards to the current franchise agreement that we have with Waste Management. Council did give first reading to 2 bylaws allowing for the opening of services or opening of that franchise service to multiple users. One of the questions that remains to be answered by council is whether this was limited strictly to construction waste, or whether we were looking at opening this up to all large-scale bin commercial garbage. So the latest memo that's attached tonight is the same November 3rd memo. What we have done is put give some perspective as to what service we're looking at. Right now, the large bin and construction waste contract is about $93,000. We typically have anywhere from 15 to say 20 customers using this area. We have about 9 to 10 regular customers. Those are local businesses, and the rest are usually construction waste. I don't have any volume breakdowns per se. That our commercial regular customers are certainly the larger of the, in terms of volume as well. Just to give you some idea, this is a relatively small part of our overall garbage business. Even in particular with commercial, that we pick up, we generate about $500,000 of revenue, and we collect almost 450 bins compared to the 15 bins that are here tonight. The proposed changes in terms of the initial request is to look at construction waste only. That's certainly been expanded to look at the large bin construction or regular pickup. The only difference being opening up regular pickup of large bin customers certainly would open up the possibility of contractors picking up.
Stantec has, as they have spoken here tonight, been working closely with us in developing most aspects of the program for this year. We've gotten into a conceptual design as they outlined this evening, and basically we want to go ahead and continue moving down that road with the same team that's been with us from the beginning of the problems developing, just to make sure things move along. So this year it has come in higher than typical. I think it's about 10%, which is actually an industry standard, but we've been able to keep them generally closer to the 6 to 8% range. So this year being higher, the question of course comes, why is it higher? And what's the added value for the increased cost? So with this year's program, because of some of the concerns that Grant identified with Alberta Environment, there'll be coordination with them, there'll be coordination with CP Rail, and as well as the usual utility companies like Fortis, that kind of thing. That level of coordination with outside stakeholders certainly drives up the work required by the consultants, and thus the increased costs that you're seeing. I think that, as I've said here, that it's well worth the increased cost. It's not something that we have internally the capacity to do some of that work. With the Highway 2A work going on at the same time, it's going to be a very busy construction season for us. And certainly we're recommending that council endorse this proposal.
All right, thank you.
Councilor Creasy? I make a motion to grant administration and services agreement with Stantec Consulting for the provision of engineering services for our 2012 capital program. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Questions? Seeing none, all those in favor? So carried. Thank you. Other than that, I think that brings it over. That moves us down to reports. Councilor Foster.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I'll keep this very brief. Respect the NPC, the information was pretty straightforward. We're still